It is Friday, May 5th, Cinco de Mayo, or as it is called in my house, Vahagen's birthday. It is my youngest son's birthday today. He is turning 5. It is 1:02 p.m. on the West Coast. It's pretty decent weather. And I'm excited for this conversation today. I missed you guys. I genuinely missed you guys yesterday. I sort of didn't know what to do. Kinda. So, we're going to jump into this. This is a live Q&A time, ladies and gentlemen. So, bring on your questions. I got my Bible software up and running so that we could open it up and look at the text and deal with the text. And, yeah. Happy birthday. Thank you. It's not my birthday, guys. It is not my birthday. My birthday is September 27th. It is my son's birthday, my youngest son, who is turning 5 years old today. The guy is very excited. He got a nice haircut today. He looks like a stud. So, yeah, it is his birthday. It was my anniversary yesterday. Went out with the wife, hung out, spent some time together. It was great. So lots of stuff going on. Lots and lots of stuff going on here in the Asadurian household. Thank you, Lex. Thank you, folks. Hello, hello. I think my chair is messed up. Let's try this, because I think the hydraulic on my chair is messed up. Let's see. If I slowly go down. I think it happens so slowly I don't even realize it. But we'll see. If it is, then hey, I got to get a new chair. This was a chair on the cheaper side, which was good. Now I know what to get and what not to get. Hit that like button, ladies and gentlemen. I just realized I came and sat in front of my computer and I was going on live and setting stuff up. And then I realized Mr. Ruslan is on live. And they were actually discussing something really cool that had to do with Christianity and Islam. But I was like, nope. I got to do my live. Excuse me. Okay. So we got Luke chapter 11 open. We're going to look at Lex's question here. She wants to know what Luke 11:34 is talking about. But before we get to 34, which we'll read it and then read the context. It says, your eye is the lamp of your body. When your eye is healthy, your whole body is full of light. But when it is bad, your body is full of darkness. Okay, that's the ESV. Now you got to be careful here. This is one of those things that people can really quickly run with it. But let's look at the context. Verse 33, no one after lighting a lamp puts it in a cellar or under a basket, but on a stand. So what do we have here? We have this word that gets repeated. No one after lighting a lamp. So here the question is a lamp, but it is lighting it. So light is it, right? No one does that. No one lights it and then puts it in a cellar or under a basket, which would be the opposite. But rather, what do you do with the light? You put it on a stand. Put it on a stand. So that those who enter may see the light. There we are again. Then in verse 34, he says, your eye is the lamp of your body. So what does your eye? He just told us what a lamp does. Right? The lamp gives light in the dark place, and you don't hide it. You put it in a high place so things can be seen. So he goes on to say your eye is the lamp of your body. There we are again, that subject. Okay. When your eye is healthy, meaning your eye would be in the high place, your whole body is full of light. Things can be seen. Things are seen. Let's put it that way, okay? I don't want to do too much interpretation. I was going to say you're transparent, but it's full of light. But when it is bad, what is bad? When your eye is bad, your body is full of darkness. This would be the opposite. So we do that let's do that. Therefore, be careful, lest the light in you be darkness. Lest the light in you be darkness. So watch yourself. Watch yourself so you don't give into darkness. If then your whole body is full of light, having no part dark, it will be wholly bright, as when the lamp with its rays gives you light. So notice this word here, as, just as. It's a comparison. As when the lamp with its rays gives you light. If your whole body is full of light, having no part in dark, it will be wholly bright. So I again, here's one of the things that's very important, Lex, is that one of the disadvantages of separating the Bible into verses is people thinking each verse has its own meaning. Okay? So I'll show you an example. So I would say this whole text you understand the whole text, not that verse. Not that verse alone is you can do whatever you want with that verse. Verses are not inspired. Chapter divisions are not inspired. Verse separations are not inspired by God. So we need to be very careful not to just go, here's a verse, bam, throw it out there and just do whatever we want with it. I would say this verse alone, you can do whatever you want with it. It's actually so vague where you can make it whatever you want. But if you put it in the whole context, then it's talking about being light, having light in your life. If I did this, you would never ask me a question like that. This is the way this text was written. Now, one of the things you might want to ask is, say, if there is anything before this text, meaning here, or after it, that would help us. Sometimes there is and sometimes there isn't. But the author has put it in the place for a specific reason. He has his reasons. So Luke has his reasons. I would say the text that comes afterwards is connected to this. Okay, notice he spoke about darkness and light, and then being in light and not in darkness and stuff like that. And then it says, when Jesus was speaking, a Pharisee asked him, while Jesus was speaking, by the way, while Jesus was speaking means he was saying this. As he's saying this, a Pharisee asked him to dine with him. So he went in and reclined at table. The Pharisee was astonished to see that he did not first wash before dinner. And the Lord said to him, now you Pharisees cleanse the outside of the cup and the dishes, but inside you are full of greed and wickedness. He's not talking about actual Tupperware here. He's not talking about dishes. He's not talking about forks and spoons. Because what's the context? Jesus did not wash his hands. And the Pharisee is shocked. And Jesus says, you guys cleanse the outside of the cup and dish, your body. But inside, you are full of greed and wickedness. What did he just talk about? He just spoke about your inside having light and not being full of darkness. So he's saying you guys on the outside do all the ritualistic stuff and are cleansed, and you come and appear and you show yourself off as cleansed, but in reality, on the inside, you are full of sin and darkness, right? You're full of greed and wickedness. He says, you fools, did not he who made the outside make the inside also? Well, who's this? Well, God. God created the inside and the outside, right? But give as alms those things that are within. So don't just give as alms those things that are without, right? Like on the outside. And behold, everything is clean for you. If your inside is clean and you're doing it from the inside, everything is good. But woe to you, Pharisees, for you tithe mint and rue and every herb and neglect justice and the love of God. That's the stuff on the inside, he's saying. These you ought to have done. But the justice and loving God without neglecting the others, the tithing, so on and so forth. Woe to you, Pharisees, for you love the best seat in the synagogue and greetings in the marketplace. Woe to you, for you are like unmarked graves, and people walk over them without knowing it. Then he continues. The context here, this is a precursor. This statement is a precursor, I would say. By the way, I'm just saying this like as I'm doing the study. I could be wrong about this, but we can consult some commentaries. But if I was doing an outline of this, I would look at it and say, the section ends, whatever the section is, the beginning, but whatever this section is in the beginning, it ends with 11:32. I might have actually ended chapter 11 with this and then started chapter 12 here. But again, that's neither here nor there. This is the big precursor. This is the preamble to what is going to happen later on. This entire conversation, including this, chapter 12, where he warns about the leaven of the Pharisees, is in this passage, in my opinion. Yeah, and then I would say, yeah, I'm pretty confident. Verse 4 of chapter 12 is the beginning of a new section. I would have made chapter 11, verse 33 would have been chapter 12, verse 1 for me, and it would have gone all the way to chapter 12, verse 3. That would have been one chapter if I were doing the chapter and verse separations. Again, I'm not saying this based on like lots of study, right? But this is one passage. This is one thought in Luke's mind. And this whole light in the, the eye being the light is a precursor to the Pharisees being dark. And it is to tell us essentially, you and I, that we can't just show religiosity on the surface level. What needs to be taken place is an internal change and commitment to Christ and internal righteousness that overflows into the external stuff. Amen. Amen, Jason. We spoke about this earlier. What's up? What's up, Dave? How you doing, man? I read the KJV version. Okay, let's open up the KJV. Yeah, I don't know. Some of it might just be linguistic differences, but okay, King James Version. King James Version says, thine eye is evil, thy body also, no. The light of the body is the eye. Therefore, when the eye is single, that word means sincere. It's just Old English. So you got to be very careful. Like, you got to understand your English in regards to the way you read. If you're reading King James and it's a word that, like, you're like, what? That makes no sense. If your eye is single, like if it's alone, you might want to consult a dictionary. And then one of the best things you'll do is go to the Greek. Okay. Aplus or haplus means sincere. Okay. So the ESV translates it as healthy. Okay. But the idea there is, again, sincerity, healthiness. It looks good. How does the New King James Version translate this? Let's see. Excuse me. That was 33, right? 34. The lamp of the body is the eye. Therefore, when your eye is good. Okay, so the New King James Version goes away from single because nobody speaks like that anymore. Like, it's so confusing. And they actually write good where the ESV says healthy. Again, the word there has to do with sincerity. Always be very careful, guys. Always be careful when it comes to words that you're just not used to. Just to prove my point, so you guys know, so you guys don't think I just talk out of my rear end when it comes to this stuff. This is the commentary on this passage. Verses 37 to 54. 37 to 54, right? Now, I said I would actually include chapter 12, verses 1 to 3 into this section. But the commentators here don't. They say 37 to 54, reflecting the light and darkness imagery of the previous passage, Jesus' remarks here highlight the importance of sincere obedience over religious pretense. This section combines two episodes recounted in Matthew and Mark. The first involves a dispute over ceremonial washing before meals, and then the second is Jesus' condemnation of the scribes. Let me see if they include 12. They actually put 12, 1 to 2 in 1 to 12 in one section. Okay. Maybe I'm wrong there. It's just, in the meantime, when so many thousands of people had gathered together that they were trampling one another. Well, I can see why they would do that, considering that geography is different as well. But I would still think Luke the reason why Luke puts this here is to follow that up. He just rebuked the Pharisees, and then he goes on to say, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees, because they're hypocrites. He just rebuked them, and then he says, they're hypocrites, man. And everything they do is going to be revealed. Whether Jesus said this right after each other or what the context was, I think Luke is doing that to be contextually continuous, to move on from one passage to the other in a very kind of smooth way. And one of the, I guess I'll talk about, I'll share in a little bit about how there's multiple levels of intent in regards to biblical literature. I'll explain that to you. Is this interesting to you guys watching? I know that some of you guys are writing comments, so I'll address that, but tell me of how much interest this is, because what I'm about to explain is really cool. It's going to help you a lot when you read the Bible. Okay, we good? Everybody good? Drop a little 1 if you're paying attention to what we're talking about here. I want to see if I can draw this for you guys. I don't know, my iPad. If you're paying attention to what we're talking, we're doing hermeneutics here, guys. We're doing hermeneutics. This is important stuff. This is why people misunderstand biblical texts, is they don't do their hermeneutics properly, okay? For some of you guys, if you don't know this is seriously going to blow your mind. Okay, I'm going to try to use that passage to essentially show you what I'm talking about, okay? So let's look at this passage and what's going on. Okay. So, we want to ask questions of audience. Okay? So, if we go to Luke chapter 1, Luke is writing this book. Okay? And Luke says, we're talking authorship, so the speaker, the author, the writer / speaker, we'll explain what that means, to an individual or to people. So there's a certain kind of audience there, okay? Pay very close attention to this, guys. I'm giving you guys This is like $500 worth of information I'm giving you guys. Okay. So I'm going to try to make it as concise as possible. I put a number to that, by the way. Like when I went to school, I paid about $400 a unit, 3-unit class on biblical hermeneutics. So that's $1,200 for a class I took to learn this information plus some others. But this information is included in there. But it's gonna help you so much, and it's gonna help your apologetics, because when people usually ask questions, okay, when people usually ask you questions about the biblical text, in my experience, a lot of people don't know how to read the Bible. A lot of people don't know how to read. They don't know how to break it down in regards to what's going on in the biblical text, okay? So this is some good content I'm giving you guys. Please pay attention. You 16 folks that are in here, feel blessed if you don't know this information. Now, we're looking at the Gospel of Luke as a totality, okay? As a totality. He says, inasmuch as many have undertaken to compile a narrative of the things that have been accomplished among us. So he makes a reference to other books that have been written, narratives, just as though who from the beginning were eyewitnesses and ministers of the word have delivered them to us. It seemed good to me also, having followed all things closely for some time past, to write an orderly account for you, O most excellent Theophilus. So here's what we know about the Gospel of Luke. The author, say Luke, is writing to an audience. In this case, the audience he's writing to is someone named Theophilus, which is a very interesting name, by the way, because it literally means lover of God. Theophilos, right? Like philosophia, lover of wisdom. So it could be that this is someone's actual name, or it could be that this might be some kind of a title he's given this individual. Scholars debate. Regardless, it's to a person, we'll call him Theophilus. So he says he's given an orderly account, right? So he's giving an orderly account. Folks think, and I think this is very obvious when you read Luke, is that it's a chronological account. He's done his research. He's basically writing a book for Theophilus. Now, knowing that, we got the audience, Theophilus, the writer, Luke. But that's not the only thing that's going on, okay? That is not the only thing that's going on in any given text. Because even though Luke is writing these things as a narrative, okay, even though Luke is writing these things as a narrative, in the text, you get Jesus talking. Okay, so whenever, let's just say red letters, Jesus is talking. So when Luke is not narrating, when it's Jesus talking. So we're specifically talking about the Gospels right now. So not the author now, the speaker, which would be Jesus, has a different audience. So in this case, Jesus is talking to, right, he's talking to crowds, Pharisees, his own disciples. It changes. So now we got like level 1, Luke to Theophilus. Level 2, Jesus to X crowd, or the Pharisees, or to the disciples. That matters. Now what Luke is doing is he's taking what Jesus is talking to this crowd. He's putting it in narrative form, but it's not just narrative form. He has a point he's trying to make as well in the context. Let's say he's talking about money. He's going to use like a large section of it. In Luke, he talks about money, and he uses Jesus' different statements about money, and he puts it in there. So he takes what Jesus is saying to the disciples or to the Pharisees or to whomever he's talking to, and puts it in a certain context. Now it's Luke using Jesus to make his point. Okay? It's very important for you to understand that when you're doing your biblical hermeneutics. Now, in this text, Luke gives us a narrative of Jesus going at the Pharisees real hard, right? He's rebuking them, he's correcting them, and he's the woes onto them is a complete rebuke of the way they do things. But what Luke decides to do is right before this, he puts in this other text, okay, where Jesus is talking about being sincere, letting your eyes be seen as sincere, as someone who's full of light rather than full of darkness. And what he does is he takes that, Luke puts it as a precursor, and then he follows up the rest of this narrative. So this is the different levels. You always have to ask these questions, like, what is Luke doing here? How do these things connect together? Okay? It's really, really important. If you're studying the Bible, it's very important for you to know how to connect this. The issues I have with a lot of people, a lot of preachers, is they'll take a verse like this, your eye is the lamp of your body, and they'll just run, man. They'll start saying a bunch of stuff Jesus never intended on saying. Jesus is saying, be pure inside, be sincere inside. Okay? Be pure and sincere inside, and then that will result in the outside being pure and sincere. It'll be full of light. It'll be good. So, multiple levels of talking, multiple reasons of using the text in whatever way. You might even get the same text in different gospels in which the authors are using it in a different context because they're trying to make a different point. Okay. Let's jump into some of the stuff you guys are saying. What did you do for your son's birthday? Nothing yet. We have a little gathering tomorrow for him. What up, Eddie? How you doing, brother? Arthur, what do you look like without a beard? I look just fine without a beard. But Jerome says you'll find out next month. Jerome, don't forget, Manchester United lost. They could lose again. We could catch up. Imagine how awesome that would be. Hey, American Cuban, can we hang on with this and then we'll come back to it, okay? Abdel Majid Bari says, Jesus, the messenger of God, peace be upon him. He needs food. He needs food. I'm not going to get sarcastic just yet with you, Abdel Majid. Just hang on there. You got a good pastor, bro. You have a good pastor. Well done to your pastor. Speaking of how much it costs to learn this stuff, your reaction video made me realize how massive the apologetics empire actually is. How did you have a 5-year undergraduate degree for biblical studies? No, it's a 4-year undergraduate. It's a bachelor's degree. It just took me 5 years to finish because I'm a bit slow. No, it's because I was working full-time and going to school full-time. So it's a 4-year undergraduate degree, and that's a degree in biblical studies. It has nothing to do with apologetics. It's an accredited degree in biblical studies. Yeah, well, some of us had to, work full time because Jerome, my mama and daddy didn't have all the money to, pay for my education beforehand, and I just sat on my butt in school and did that. I had to work. Nothing with that, man. I'm an immigrant, man. Some of us didn't get those privileges that other people get, which is fine. So I had to work hard. Okay. Reading the Bible like you are takes forever. We are doing it literally verse by verse in Acts, and I read it this way too, and I can maybe get a chapter done in 15 minutes. Look, Jason, I would say the more you do it, the better you get at it. I've had practice. I've been doing this for almost 20 years. I've been professionally trained to do this, and I've been doing this regularly for 20 years. So you get really good at it. It just takes time. This is an amen, guys. When you read the Bible, like Arthur is saying, it changes the whole way you understand the Bible because you start understanding it properly. Right? You start understanding it properly within its context and the interconnectedness the Bible has together. You don't look at the Bible as these disjointed, quick verse statements, right? Like verse of the day. How are you going to understand what the verse of the day is if you do not understand the sentence, the paragraph, the larger section it's in, and the book it's in? You will not understand it. This is why I can't stand stuff like, oh, this is the verse of the day. Oh, my little devotional thing. Just stop it, man. Grow up. Grow up. You've been a Christian for like a year and a half, and you're still like going about like, oh, I got my verse of the day. You are a baby. You need to grow up. Spiritually speaking, you need to grow up. I would say even like intellectually speaking and maturity-wise, you need to grow up. Oh, I don't like reading. Too bad. Too bad. You don't like reading? Learn to like it. There's many things in life I don't like doing. There's many things in life you don't like doing. Maturity means you grow up. And you do the thing even if you don't like doing it. You're going to do many things in life that you don't like doing, but they're good for you. Christians are sometimes the laziest, apathetic individuals when it comes to the Word of God. And then we sit there and we say, why is everybody listening to all these false teachers and wrong teachers? And all? Because we're silly people. You think you got I got my daily dose of my devotional verse. Dude, you're a grown person. You're a grown person. You should be intaking large portions of the Word of God at one time. You should have the ability by this point in your life, if you're an adult, you should have the ability to sit there and read the Bible from 30 minutes to an hour and a half, easy. And I don't just mean read it, I mean study it, whatever section that is. If you're a grown person and you can't get yourself to read more than 15 minutes, you need to grow up. But you can scroll on Facebook for an hour and a half, and you can be on Instagram for 2 hours, and you can watch YouTube videos for 2 hours, and you can't read and study for an hour? You're either very lazy. Most of the time, I would say you're lazy. Now, if you have learning disabilities, and I know people who have learning disabilities, there's different ways to deal with your learning disabilities. Then, yeah, I would say maybe you don't read whatever. You got a learning disability in regards to reading, use your audio Bible. But like, don't just like passively listen. You're like doing something else in your house and you got the Bible in your ears going. Pick up a pen, pick up a pad, pick up a book, pick up a commentary, and sit there and listen and pay attention and take notes and write and ask questions. Later on, go to some other audiobook you might have on it and then figure it out, man. We have so much information in our hands. There's absolutely no excuse. Sorry there, I'm preaching right now, man. It's just really annoying to me. Well, look, it's not specifically in regards to apologetics, because people, like a lot of the people that I went to school with ended up becoming pastors, right? Or they continued in different theological, or they just got that, and then I know people who went to Bible college, got their degree in biblical studies, and ended up becoming lawyers or programmers. So it's just a bachelor's degree. Yeah, you old man. So am I. You got a good pastor, man. He said, man, if my pastor could speak English, you two would be best buds. Can't wait till you two meet now. That's hilarious. Hey, I'll turn that into a short. I'll clip it, guys. I'll turn it into a shorter video. You guys really like that rant, huh? What does the Bible say about what kind of free will we have in heaven? Can God still influence our will? Can God still influence our will? Can God still... I feel like there should be a comma there somewhere, Fenton. Can God still influence our will there with life experience? So the Bible doesn't really go into the subject of free will in heaven or the afterlife or anything like that. These are what we would call matters of theological speculation. So you build a case based on the text, and then you theologically base that. Typically what theologians will say is, yes, we will have free will in heaven, but it will not be, since there will be a complete absence of evil and even a desire to do evil, because your nature is glorified, you will only choose to do what is right and good. Now, how does this make sense? Well, the typical answer is, look at God. God is the sort of being that will always continually choose that which is good. So our nature will be very much like God and God's. And then you have a lot of Bible passages that, we can quote to back that up. Can God still... Now, can there still be some sort of a life experience sort of growth in that? Not everybody is in agreement with that. Some people think yes, some people think no. Some people, communicate it in a sense of like, it will be like from glory to glory or from one good thing to the other good thing. some sort of a thing like that. I don't know whether we would want to call that growth or not, or progression, because growth usually like has to do with like a lack of something, and then progression. So people got to flesh this out theologically, but yeah, the Bible really doesn't go into that. It's that's why we do theology. Said Arthur just went full Paul Washer. I didn't. Look, guys, I'm serious, man. Like, I don't know. It's a lot of the questions people ask could literally be solved in about 2 months worth of hard work. Okay, like maybe less, depending on how fast you read. Here, I interviewed Dr. David De Silva last week, okay? And he actually was essentially saying like, dude, you have no excuses. Like, you should have read the Bible. You should have read, you should be prepared enough, because we were talking in that context about your understanding of the Bible, which would pave way, because if you understand the New Testament, the Old Testament, well, it would pave way for you to pay attention to the apocryphal books. That's the context we were talking about. And he was like, yeah, there shouldn't be an excuse. You've been a Christian for 2 years. You should have that down. Like, you should have already read the Bible. And I forget, he actually gave the audio. He said the Bible in audio form is like 132 hours or something like that. I don't remember the exact number he gave, but that's not a lot of time. Some of y'all play more video games, spend more time on video games, spend more time on Facebook and Instagram. And then you go out and have enough time to read the Bible, right? Like, I'll give you an example. You read this book, his book. This was a foundational work for me. It was really helpful in my understanding of the background to the New Testament culture and how people thought and what their expectations were and why they did the sort of stuff they did that seems so weird to me. And by the way, like, culturally, as an Armenian, there's a lot of things we do that the biblical cultures do. And so it's a lot easier for me to pay attention. So the further removed you are culturally from the biblical culture, the more you got to pay attention to this stuff. Like, how long will it take you to read this book? How many pages is this? It's 320 pages. Okay. This book is 320 pages. Okay. Not many pictures and stuff. Like, whatever. Let's just say that's going to take you, let's do some math here. It's 320 pages. Let's say you read it in 30 days, okay? You're reading 10 pages a day, 11 pages a day, okay? Let's say you read it in 2 months, okay? It's 320. I did something wrong there. Okay, you're reading about 6 pages a day. Pretty sure I did my guys, 6 days of reading a day. 2 months. You can be done with this book every single day. You can, month and a half, skip Saturday, Sundays. You're reading about 15 pages a day. That's not a lot of reading. And then you'll be prepared. Same thing with the Bible. You got to be planned. That's the issue. You plan. Can I have ChatGPT give me summary of each book? You can, but summaries are obviously, they're summaries. They're not going to give you all the details and stuff. I can give you summaries of all the books I've read. But it's like, and then what? Read, man. Or is it scrolling or hitting like next on the stories or whatever, right? And look, we all do it. This is not like, I'm not being critical in that sense. Like, I do that. And I got to catch myself and be like, hang on, man, you spend too much time on this stuff. Why does the end of the world after Jesus comes back is only recorded that heaven will be on earth for 1,000 years? What happens then? Yeah, that's a specific interpretation. I think the book of Revelation chapter 21 specifically says that God will dwell on earth with people forever. It's not just 1,000 years. I can do 300 pages in a day easily. I don't know what that is. The TTS, I don't know what that is, but there are no shortcuts to it. Like most good things in life, there aren't any shortcuts. Okay. Okay, so let's go back to the American Cubans question there. I don't want to skip that. I've scrolled quite a bit, so let me go back. Abdel Majid left. He was trying to convert us to Islam, and then he left. Okay, so here's a question. Was it cruel for God to drown innocent babies and children during Noah's flood? I thought that children only pay for their own sins according to Ezekiel. The soul that sins shall die. Okay, so what you're doing is you're taking something out of the covenant later on in Ezekiel and then retrospectively applying to an earlier situation, pre-covenant, pre-Mosaic covenant when it comes to Noah. Our introduction to the story of Noah is that the men were evil and wicked, and that the thought of the heart of man was only continuously evil, always. Now, I don't necessarily think there's anything inconsistent with the God of the universe looking at humanity and saying, I'm going to judge every single human being. Was it cruel? It depends what you mean by cruel. It was harsh, but judgment always is harsh. Right? It always is harsh. One of the things we need to get established, one of the things we need to get established is that God does not in any way, God is not in any way obligated to do things the way we want them done. He can do whatever he wants and however he wants to do it, in accordance to his nature. And so if God looked at it and said, I'm going to judge everyone. Now, specifically when it comes to like babies and children and stuff like that, it is God's prerogative, I would say, if he wanted to start everything anew from the beginning, then he has the right to do that. It could actually, these are potentialities we're talking about, but it could actually have been gracious to I don't want, could have been gracious given the context and given how society was continuously always evil and stuff like that to those children. It could have been a merciful act, considering how they could have grown up and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I would say just God has the right to judge, and he judged everyone. Is it harsh? Is it cruel? Again, it depends what you mean by cruel there. I would maybe want a qualification on the word cruel. But yeah, it's harsh. But judgment is always harsh. Isaac Newton said Jesus coming back in 2060. I wonder what his calculations were there. Like, why? I've never heard this before, so I'm interested in this. Okay, 1704, Isaac Newton predicts the world will end in 2060, but I want to know why. Why that date? By the way, the Bible says don't listen to people who give you dates. So it's always interesting. I want to know his reasons. Oh, it's in his commentary on the book of Revelation. It says, and the days of short-lived beasts being put 40 years lived. Okay. It is dated from the complete conquest of the three kings in AC 800 will end. Oh, yeah, he bases, yeah. So this is his justification, I guess. Proposition 1, the 2300 prophetic, I love how prophetic is written. That's how English used to be, by the way. Prophetic days did not commence before the rise of the little horn of the he-goat. Those days did not commence, so on and so forth. So it's adding. They did not commence after the reign of Gregory the Seventh. Yeah. The Bible, Jesus said, if anybody says, there he is, here he is, or give you dates and times, don't listen to them. So appreciate the work, Sir Isaac, but no candy. Yeah, I don't get judging God as if he were human. I more so would show contradiction between God's motive and what he manifests in reality. Okay, that's fair. It's going well, man. It's going well. Hey, we've been on for an hour. You guys, we're going to do this for about another 30 minutes, and then I got to head out. Got lots of stuff to do, but I want to honor you guys. I was very tempted to actually not have a live today because I have so much stuff to do, but I said no, it ain't gonna happen. I'm committed to this. I'm committed to do my lives, to interact with folks. So Hey, I appreciate it. Thank you, Lex. I don't have any plans to come to Texas just yet. If I get an invitation to speak somewhere in Texas, then I will come to Texas. Yeah, so for those who don't know, I signed with an agency that are representing me in regards to speaking gigs and stuff like that. So Sound Faith Consulting, they're basically going to be booking my speaking engagements and all that stuff. And they actually just released their entire speakers team. And it's cool, man. It's cool to be a part of a group like this. So Dr. Doug Groothuis, he's been on the channel. I've interviewed Professor Groothuis. He's written phenomenal books. Chris Gonzalez, I haven't met, but I've seen some stuff from him. Former FBI agent. He's the founder of GoodTube Kids. Y'all can check that out. Tim Stratton, I know Tim. He's been on the channel. We've interacted quite a bit. And then Tim Haseo, we gotta have Tim on, man. This guy, especially on this stuff, especially on that sort of conversations. And then yours truly. Then Dean. So yeah. These are the speakers so far, and there's I think more folks will be added. They just released this. This is a pretty cheap resource on women in ministry, if you're interested in that. So it's a resource on the question of women in ministry. If you guys are interested in that, it's about $2. So Sound Faith Consult. And we'll be producing things of like that more. And hopefully I can take part in some of that stuff that we're going to be producing. What up, Justin? How you doing, brother? Guys, Jerome is not a Man U fan. Jason, Jerome is not a Manchester United fan. He's an Arsenal fan. Okay. Man, Liverpool just released their jerseys for next year. Oh man, I'm totally buying that one. That one is nice. It's retro sort of focused, and I'm gonna get that. Yeah, I mean Brighton looks good, man, and the games they have. I mean, I will be cheering for Everton on Monday. Brighton, Everton are playing, but I have no hope for Everton, man. It's so bad. But I'll be cheering for them. Newcastle's playing Arsenal, so I hope Arsenal wins, so that damages Newcastle's chances. West Ham's playing Man U. Come on, West Ham. Put it to them. Man, if West Ham wins, that's going to be brilliant. And then we got Brentford. That's a home game, but that's going to be a tough game. Brentford's playing really well. They're very difficult. Yeah, we just need Arsenal to beat Newcastle. We need West Ham to beat United. And we need Everton to tie or beat Brighton. And then Liverpool to beat Brentford. That happens, that next 2-3 games is going to be insane. By the way, there's a Newcastle-Brighton game as well. So that's from match week 25. That's them catching up. Newcastle-Brighton could really throw this top 4, third, fourth place into like complete and utter chaos. It's going to be nuts. Like if these are some insane games, okay, that are coming up in regards to into third and fourth place, and then what happens in regards to fifth and sixth. But where is it? So this game is a huge game, And then you got Arsenal, Brighton. So Brighton's playing Arsenal, Newcastle, and they're playing Everton. So we need a tie maybe here. Or if Brighton loses this game, if Brighton loses to Everton and Arsenal, then I'd want them to beat Newcastle, obviously. They'll probably end up beating Southampton. And then they also got Man City. So Brighton's got a tough setup. But you got Chelsea, Man United. Come on, Chelsea. And then you got a Chelsea-Newcastle game. Come on, Chelsea. Finish, that's final day of the year. You got Chelsea-Newcastle are playing. And then, where is it? Fulham, Man United. That's going to be a tough game for Man U. Anything can happen, man. Anything can happen. The reason why we're talking about this, by the way, is that if Liverpool do not make it into the top 4, so this is what the standings are currently. If Liverpool do not make it into the top 4, I got to shave my beard. Okay. Now, Liverpool are looking good, guys. Liverpool are looking good. Look at that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're making late season chase for that European spot. These guys got a game in hand, both of them. These guys got 2 games in hand. But it's going to be a huge battle for between 1, 2, 3, and 4, these teams, because these guys have a tough games coming up, and then these guys have very tough games coming up. So if things fall into place properly, Liverpool can legitimately sneak into 4th place, if not 3rd place. If Liverpool finish the season in 3rd place, this will be a highly successful season, considering the way they've played all season. Yeah, the comment I made about Man U was that they lost. I hope Manchester City slip. I want Arsenal to win the league. Running commentary. Today's just normal Q&A, man. No, I think their attacking options are good. I think their midfield looks solid. I think what Arsenal need are backup defenders, just in case some of their defenders get injured. They got a good team. They got a good coach. It's solid. I mean, they can go out and sign some crazy kind of superstar. But again, I think they got a good team. I mean, Saka on the right is really good. Gabi Jesus is a really good player. I wish Liverpool had gotten him. Yeah, I mean, it's a good team. They got a good team. They might be able to, sneak in a nice midfielder, like a really top-notch midfielder. And again, they might, because they're making Champions League, and they might be able to get some guys. But it seems like Liverpool's going to sign McAllister. By the way, it's been announced that James Milner will be leaving Liverpool at the end of the season. And he's not retiring. He's going to Brighton. What a player he's been, man. What a career. I'm looking at his stats right now. James Milner, 37 years old. Starting from Swindon Town, he scored 2 goals. And then Leeds United, he had 5 goals, 1 assist. Aston Villa, he had 22 goals, 26 assists. Newcastle, he had 11 goals, 19 assists. Man City had 19 goals, 44 assists. And for Liverpool, he had 26 goals and 46 assists. The guy with Newcastle United won the UEFA... What cup was this? The UEFA Cup, whatever cup. For Man City, he won the Premier League 2 times, won the FA Cup, won Football League Cup, won FA Community Shield. For Liverpool, he won the Premier League, 2 FA Cups, 1 Football League Cup, EFL Cup, 1 FA Community Shield, UEFA Champions League, UEFA Super Cup, and the FIFA World Cup. Man. What a career, guys. What a player. Look at that. It's phenomenal. But he is leaving. So it seems like McAllister is going to get signed, and then Liverpool is going to get at the very least 3 new midfielders coming in, which is great. Hey, I want to watch a little video with you guys. It's a video of Muhammad Hijab. I've never seen it. It's Muhammad Hijab reacting to, seems like, Patrick Bet David. It's a response. So I want to see what's going on.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you guys doing? Many of you would have known that in the past I have made a refutational, or actually a series of refutational videos against one Patrick Bet David, an individual who's notorious in social media and has his own podcast where he has various guests. Now, this particular person has actually changed his mind on some key issues, and I wanted to bring this to the fore and give him credit for that, actually, because a lot of people will find it difficult to do this. Let's take a look at some before and after clips, wherein before he would, in my characterization at least, hyper-generalize in a low-resolution way the status of Muslim terrorists, or terrorism in Islam, or terrorism in Muslims, and then afterwards he corrects himself. Let's take a look at the before and the after.
In a Muslim religion, as much as people in America want to make it's a very peaceful thing. You've heard Bill Maher say this before, but Bill says most Muslims are not terrorists. But Bill Maher also says most terrorists are Muslims, right? Well, he's not wrong.
First thing we think about is also Muslim extremists. I mean, every Muslim is a Muslim extremist, which is not. It's a smaller sect of the majority.
So recently he's had another guest where he was talking about Islam again, and he asked a very pertinent question, to which, in my opinion, he received an unsatisfactory reply from his guest. Let's take a look at the question that he asked.
What are they doing that their messaging is more attractive, or NBA players, football players, Hollywood? Some people are starting to say, well, I'm kind of going to lean towards this than Christianity today.
So as you can see, he's asking, what is it their messaging? Okay, now, first and foremost, is I think what's happening here, whether it's intentional or unintentional, there is a kind of equivocation going on between Islam as a religion, okay, and the Muslim people, or Islam as a civilization. These are 3 different things, or usages of the word Islam. Historians, for example, when they use the word Islam, they talk about Islam as a civilization, okay? But then Muslims are the practitioners of Islam. What are they doing? Their messaging. It's not really that Muslims have a messaging or a PR campaign, or that we're all coming together and saying this is what we're going to say. It's just that there is a simple message of Islam, and that is to believe in one God, to believe that there's only one God worthy of worship. If you want to juxtapose this or compare this, or contrast this with Christianity, then clearly the main difference here is that we don't believe Jesus is God or the Son of God. We don't believe in the Trinity. These are the main theological differences between Islam and Christianity in a nutshell. But of course, there are many other things as well, which one can research. We've had lots of discussions about on this very channel. Suffice it for me to say that the theological messaging is very different relating to the status of God. We believe in one God worthy of worship. Christians believe that there are 3 persons of God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. If you look at the data, why people convert to Islam, this is one of the most oft-repeated, oft-cited reasons why people do so. And then, of course, there are these other things, the social norms, the moral code. There are the, very clear hudud, or lines, red lines. Hudud means boundaries that Allah, God, has set for us. Which
Correct. Because we don't think you earn your way into heaven, and Muslims do. That's why there are such red lines in Islam. That doesn't mean Christians... look, there's a lot of people who claim to be Christians that are not Christians. They're immoral. They don't care about morality. And it's very unfair when Muslims throw that up on the Christians and say, look, oh, this is what you guys are about. This is what it's about. I might like to draw your attention to certain quote-unquote Islamic countries in which very similar stuff is happening. And people claim to be Muslims. As a matter of fact, in some cases, probably a lot worse stuff is happening.
People find attractive and appealing because it gives them a sense of purpose. And of course, purpose itself is something which Islam aims to give. But having said this now, I think the guest, he missed the boat when he was answering the question. He said that Islam provides a strong patriarchal response to, say, feminism. But if this was the case, if this is the main reason why people convert to Islam, then why not convert to Orthodox Judaism? Orthodox Judaism has very many similar laws when it comes to the family and traditional nuclear homes and so on. So why not Orthodox Judaism? That is because there are key differences between Islam, which is an evangelizing, proselytizing religion, a cosmopolitan religion, and Judaism, which isn't any of.
He's right. He's right about this. Jews do not evangelize the way Christians evangelize and the way that Muslims evangelize.
Those things in any of the same way.
Even though I don't know whether it's all, I just had this thought. It's like we call it evangelizing because we're actually sharing the good news, the gospel, which is very central to Christianity. And I don't think in Islam it's ever thought about that way. Like this is the good news. By evangelizing, he means proselytizing, right? Like trying to convince people to become Muslims. But I wouldn't say... I'd go on a limb here, say it's probably not very accurate to call what Muslims do evangelizing. That's like that's a Christian sort of thing.
Islam is. Let's take a look at another thing now, another segment, which I found quite problematic, let's say, with what Patrick Bet-David has stated about the media in Islam.
But at the same time, the media will defend Muslim, but the media will not defend Christianity. The sports teams will say, hey, you have to be a little bit more understanding about the Muslim religion, but Christianity, they can get shots.
So on the point of media representation of Muslims, I think it's completely problematic. And Zishan from Smart and Jan has made a video in this segment. He talked about Georgia State University has actually put a study about media representation of Muslims and how it's actually, on the whole, quite negative. And that is why many of the maybe misconceptions that he initially had before he changed his mind were present in the first place because of negative media representation. But the issue of sports is even more unusual. I know he made a very specific point about teams and so on. Maybe he's talking about NFL teams or NBA teams in the American context. But it's unusual, but not least because if you look at the main kind of institutions, sports institutions and organizations, FIFA, the Olympics, and so on, I would submit that actually almost all of them are disfavorable to Muslim nations, Muslim countries, Muslim teams. How so? For example, look at the Olympics. It's divided into the Summer Olympics and then you've got the Winter Olympics. The Winter Olympics in and of itself excludes the majority of Muslim countries because of the fact that most of those countries are not even in a climate where you could do things like skiing and so on. So it's already exclusionary. To the majority of the Muslim world, 60 countries are Muslim majority.
Hang on, that's not because they're Muslims, man. That's just geography, dude. Come on. It's like, have you not seen Cool Run-Ins? Have you not seen Cool Run-Ins? The first Jamaican bobsled team. Come on. Are we going to say like, oh, the Olympics are disfavorable towards Jamaicans and Caribbeans? Like, or the Winter Olympics? Come on. That's not a good argument, man. It's like that has nothing to do with Muslims. It's just that Muslims live in a certain kind of geography, right? Like it has nothing to do with the religion. What it has to do with is where they're living.
And then once again, look at FIFA. The majority of World Cups, for example, of the ones that have actually been hosted, were hosted in Western nations or Latin America. I mean, it's been, for the most part, Europe or Latin America.
Correct, because the sport has been played in those places and popularized by those places, and trophies have been won in those places. I'm sorry, like, you saw what the Qatari team did in the World Cup. It was the worst competition for any nation to have ever hosted the World Cup, and South Africa was bad. But Qatar was worse. Serious? Like, are you going to compare the way the Brazilians played the game? Do you know the amount of time that the Qatari team worked for this team to be in the World Cup? They've been working on that team for 12 years. 12 years. Some of those players that were playing in the World Cup, that same coach had been working for them, with them for 12 years. Some of those guys were 16, 17 years old when he started working with them, younger, so that they would be prepared for the World Cup. And they had a really, really bad World Cup. It's a highly competitive sport. It's not because they're against Muslims. It's just that, you know what? Like, it's weird because, like, what about the African teams? Like, think about Senegal. Like, look how good Senegal is as a team. They've produced good players. Good amount of those guys, as far as I know, are Muslims. Look at the Egyptian team. Like, just look at African nations that have a predominantly Muslim population. Come on. Like, you got to understand the sport, man. Like, again, if you don't understand the sport and how competitive the sport is, the sport has become a lot more competitive. The weaker teams, quote unquote weaker teams, are performing a lot better. Look at Croatia, man. 3 million people, and the way that the players they've produced and what they've done. And now they're expanding, because it's gotten better, they're expanding the amount of teams in the World Cup. They've always done this, by the way. Every once in a while, they'll expand the amount of teams. Jerome's got a great point. Much of the French team are Muslims, actually. Correct. So it's just geography, and then also people who haven't focused and put attention into the sport. Look at the Asian context. I mean, Iran, man, the Islamic Republic of Iran makes it to the World Cup pretty, like, quite often, and that's predominantly because they're competing in Asia. They're not competing in Europe. They're competing in Asia. And so they're able to make it to the World Cup. A lot of those Muslims, like Syria and whatnot, you know, are competing in Asia, Iraq. Like, you got to know how this stuff is separated, man. Like Europe, the Asian context. Like, if you don't know these things, commenting on, like, oh, there's a bias on FIFA and this and that. No, it's just not. I mean, why are the Chinese, like, the Chinese have made it to the World Cup one time. The Indians have never made it to the World Cup. Look how many people those two countries are together. You're telling me they can't produce, you know, a group of 25 people who can play soccer very well? It's highly competitive. And maybe culturally, they just don't focus on that because that's not very important for them. I mean, the Indians don't produce good soccer teams, but they produce really good cricket teams. I don't follow cricket, but New Zealand might not produce a really good soccer team, but they produce a good rugby team. Right? So certain cultures and countries put their attention on certain things when it comes to athletics. The Chinese might not be in the World Cup, but look at what they're doing in the Olympics. Look at their divers, the gymnastics, even to a certain extent when it comes to their wrestling. The Armenians, who can't get into the World Cup, even with really good teams, but because they're competing in Europe, it's very difficult being in groups with Germany and Portugal and stuff, regularly win medals in the World Cup when it comes to wrestling, when it comes to weightlifting. They're really good in chess because that's the sort of stuff they put attention to. So, it's just, oh, look, we're victims. Look at us. I don't buy that stuff, man.
The home field advantage is very real, as we've seen Qatar recently, which is a Muslim country, the first time a Middle Eastern country, and I think the first time a Muslim country has ever, hosted a World Cup, and you saw completely different results.
No, you didn't. The Qatar was horrendous. Brazil hosted the World Cup, and they got beat 7-1. It happens. South Africa didn't do so good. It happens all the time. It's like, oh, what are you going to say? Look, Qatar hosted it and Morocco did really good. Morocco's got a golden generation of players, man. They played phenomenal. And they would be the African contingent there. How Muslim is Morocco, by the way? It seems to me that it's a very liberal Muslim country. Come on.
Morocco, a Muslim country, reaching the semi-finals. So the point is, this wasn't the case of all the World Cups that had a Muslim country reaching the semi-finals. So the point is, this wasn't the case of all the World Cups that happened. You only find a few of them which favor the Muslim interest. So you've got the Olympics, you've got the FIFA World Cup, which are the two biggest tournaments in sports, and are controlled by American businessmen and so on, or European businessmen for the most part. That's one aspect. And then
Dude, do you know how many clubs are owned in the world by like Emirates and...
You've got in popular American culture, which you'll be very familiar with. I remember growing up and seeing a character on the WWE, the World Wrestling Organization, called Muhammad Hassan. And this was a particular wrestler who, when he came out, played the part of a terrorist, actually. And there was actually one segment where when he came out, many of you will have remembered, in WWE, he came with terrorists and so on, so much so that the television station had to ban this character from appearing ever again. It was a scandalous event. So post 9/11, I would argue, in sports and in general, look at the Qatar situation where you had all of these people, all these teams coming and talking about Gary Lineker and all these pundits from across the world attacking Qatar, trying to get them to be undermined in some way. So the argument is not really there, I have to say, Patrick. I'm not following the argument that you're making here in terms of sports and representation of Islam and Islam being represented. However, I will agree with the guest when he said that Christianity and Christian figures were also being depicted in a backward manner. And that is, of course, after 1960s, and the guest was correct here in saying that there was now a shift towards individualism and social liberalism, something I cover in a small book that you can get for free called The Scientific Deceptions of the New Atheist. But having said this, I think it's good that Patrick is now moving in the trajectory of understanding the other side. I hope that trajectory continues. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you, Mr. Hijab. Appreciate it. Yeah, what I would just say is that Muhammad Hijab, if you're going to talk sports, okay, now you're in England. I'm not, but I follow the Premier League and I know the world of soccer, football, like the back of my hand. If you're going to comment on sports and the way it is and the way the structure is and what goes into the structure and all that and make some kind of a claim that it's somehow religious discrimination or something like that, you better know what you're talking about. Yeah, and Qatar wasn't criticized because they were Muslims. It specifically had to do with... Initially, it had to do with human rights violations in regards to slave labor and so on and so forth in building the stadiums and stuff. And in the conversation when the World Cup was about to get going, the conversation switched quite a bit to LGBTQ rights and what that looked like, and so on and so forth. Look, I should actually remind us that Korea, when Korea and Japan hosted the World Cup. I think, I want to say it was the first time that the World Cup had been hosted in Asia. So somebody correct me on this, if I'm right or wrong about that. I think South Korea, Japan was the first time the World Cup was hosted. And that was in 2002, if I'm not mistaken, in Asia. Correct? Korea, Japan. Yeah, I want to say it was the first time. Korea, Japan, 2002. And both teams invested heavily, and the sport has really taken off in those countries because of the World Cup. And they've produced really, really good players over the years, and they are top-notch football teams now, and produce really good players. I would say the same thing about the United States. The United States in 1994 hosted the World Cup, and after and they were forced to create a league. That's when the MLS came into existence. And after that, the United States has just gotten better and better and better at the sport. Has nothing to do with the religion. Some countries put attention to this. South Americans and Europeans put a lot of attention and work into the sport and develop footballing nations. And did well. So it's silly, some of that stuff. Like, we were being discriminated against and this and that. It's like, no, those countries just haven't cared about the sport. They haven't put attention into it. And it's not something that's important to them. And maybe now it's becoming important because you are seeing individuals coming through some of the Muslim countries who are top-notch footballers. Mohamed Salah is adored all over the world. He regularly talks about his Islamic faith, right? Except, during Christmas time, he posts, Christmas pictures next to a tree and stuff like that, and the Muslims kind of lose it in the comments section. This is haram. Stop doing this. Mohamed Salah, stop doing this. Is a Christian celebration. Stop it. And I think he just kind of looks at it as it's a Western British sort of thing. It's. I'm not very sure whether he cares much about that, but yeah, like there's lots and lots of top-notch Muslim players who speak about this stuff regularly. Countries-wise, if it's not important to those countries, many countries in the world don't care about the sport. And then there's very small countries that care about it, put energy into it, put finances into it, and produce really top-notch players. They've changed the system in which they develop players. Countries like Croatia. What were the Asians going to say? Like up till 2002, were they going to say, oh, look, everybody's so racist towards us. We're Asian. That's why. It's like, no, you guys haven't cared about this sport. And now you do, and you've gotten to the host of the World Cup. They did a really good job. They put money into it, produced players, and things are good. I hope a lot more kids get motivated in some of these Muslim countries because of this World Cup, and they continue playing the sport and do well, and the countries will invest money and develop good players who will start playing internationally and then get recognition, and they will have teams that are good enough to compete and then win. It's like it's athletics, man. Armenia, till very recently, didn't have players on an international level, and so Henrik Mkhitaryan, who plays for Inter, was the one that broke through with that, and then now you got Armenians all across the world. Even some of them who are just born in those places and represent those countries, like this young guy in Russia, Arsen Zakharyan, who is very young and is being scouted by European teams. As a matter of fact, the 98 French World Cup winning squad had two Armenians on it. Yuri Djorkaev, who's ethnically Armenian, and Bogosian, who's Armenian. They were French Armenians because after the genocide, Armenians established and lived in France, did well, and ended up becoming World Cup winners. Not with Armenia, but again. So just compete, do well. Okay. That last 30 minutes was quite a bit of soccer talk, ladies and gentlemen. The king is getting coronated in England. I suppose you could say long live the king, but I'm an American, and Americans got rid of the king a couple of 100 years ago because they didn't like how the Brits did their king stuff. So For those who like the monarchy in England, congratulations. Long live your king. And hopefully we'll have a new president here in the United States. I don't want to say not long live the president. Let's hope that he continues in his life, but maybe not as president. Okay. Hey, I could totally do a sports podcast, man. I totally could do a sports podcast. I mean, not sports. I wouldn't necessarily say sports, but it's, when it comes to football, I follow it and I know what's going on. Jerome feels personally attacked. Sorry. You guys want to have a king, man. Long live your king. Have fun with the king. I'm an American. Representative Republic all the way. Okay, everybody. Thanks for hanging out. It's been a pleasure. Enjoyed it. Enjoyed both the conversations. We had a biblical conversation and theological conversation. And then we had something else that you guys know that I'm very passionate about. The next 3-4 weeks are going to be really, really interesting weeks in regards to the Premier League. So I'm excited. Hopefully Liverpool will finish 4th. Maybe even 3rd. Depending on how the way things goes, or maybe even 7th. I don't know. But let's hope that they finish higher up and we get some Champions League action next year. That would be interesting. Maybe so. Who knows? I have a lot of attention on this podcast. If it takes off and we're doing good, then I can give some more attention to an atheist and a Christian EPL podcast. That'd be hilarious. I would like to know whether Jerome would start praying when Arsenal's like 30 seconds away from winning the Premier League or the Champions League. He's like, please, Lord Jesus, help Arsenal win the league. I'm playing, guys. Okay, I'm finally going to go. Take care. God bless you guys. I'll see you Monday. Live Q&A on Monday. We'll be back, ladies and gentlemen. Take care and God bless.